because an agreement, if it doesn't create any obligations for a state to host witnesses, well, then every single individual case has to be presented so that the decision can be made by the relevant authorities. 13 witnesses have been relocated in 2022 compared to 5 in 2021. So there has been some progress. In 2021, there were 27 families that were still on the waiting list, and today there are 21. And of these 21 families, many of them were already in the first group of 27 from the previous year. So there's another difference in scale. The time that witnesses spend in temporary situations that are supposed to be brief and transitory, but tend to last much longer than foreseen. These transitory phases are very difficult when they last for a long time for the people involved, because they can't get back to living a normal life or as normal as possible after relocation, nor can they actually project themselves forward into a new country because no one's in a position to be able to tell them when and where they will be able to start their new lives. So this instability creates situations of despair and also frustration and misunderstanding vis-a-vis the court, because so far that's when witnesses start to realize the cost of their cooperation with the court for themselves, their families, their loved ones who've been involved in this process, because we haven't been able on our side to come up with a location for them to be relocated in. In 2021, 150 days. It took 150 days for the registry to recognize that somebody needed to be compensated and then relocated because of the potential risks, and the time that a government would sign an agreement and accept a witness on its territory. Now, by 2022, it's 700 days. And during these 700 days, the witnesses are situations that really takes a psychological toll. And there's also the financial aspect involved. So the court doesn't have a territory, nor does it have the sovereign authority to guarantee people a safe haven for a protracted period of time. The Rome Statute, when it comes to protection for witnesses, is, again, based on the principle of complementarity. The section for assistance to witnesses and victims will be looked at, and they'll reach a decision on the need for relocation in between 3 and 6 months. Compared to the 700 that we're dealing with now. I mean, in the Roman Statute, authors were thinking of 6 months, and then the responsibility for the witness would be transferred. But today, it takes much longer than that. And we don't have the human nor the financial resources have ever been provided for in order to contend with such a situation. And so often, relocation can take place as part of a conventional migratory pattern. So the witness could be welcomed as a refugee and be part of a larger group of refugees in a host country. This is the case that we've seen in the cases of witnesses that are also victims, and so they are eligible for refugee status. Now, the ambassador was talking about insider witnesses, and there the status of a refugee might not be available to them. And yet these are very excellent witnesses, and these are the ones who are most exposed to risk, because 60% of the people that we have to relocate are insider witnesses. And so we have to come up with another solution for this. Anyway, I'd like to conclude by just asking everybody to think about this. Some states have given us access to their witness protection programs, but there are other legal avenues. And I think that between the registry and the states parties, we should have a dialogue about this so that we can try to envisage this third avenue, a legal avenue that would make it possible for witnesses to reside legally in another country, get back to earning a livelihood and a normal life. And should that my colleagues in the registry are eager to engage in such a dialogue with the states parties, either in this forum or outside of it. Thank you. Thank you very much for that presentation. It's full of many interesting lessons. You focused on the key importance of witness protection, not just to protect them, but also to create the requisite conditions for a fair and equitable trial. And so I would encourage you with everything that you've mentioned. Thank you very much. I would now like to give the floor to Madame Motok, who is at the European Court of Human Rights. You have the floor, Madam. Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. I'm grateful to the Ambassador of France and the Ambassador of Senegal for having invited me to come and speak at this panel discussion on cooperation. And here we'll be talking about the types of protection that can be provided to witnesses through international cooperation. I would like to talk about something that is essential, i.e. the dialogue between the European Court of Human Rights and the ICC. We have some overlapping jurisdictions and fields of competence. Now, when it comes to witness protection, the European Court of Human Rights focuses on people's right to life, Article 2 of the Convention, European Convention on Human Rights, and the right to privacy and family life, Article 8. The states are under the positive obligation to protect witnesses, but they must also balance those rights against other rights, and in particular, the rights of the defense within the framework of a criminal procedure, Article 6. Generally speaking, governments have two main ways of protecting witnesses: traditional witness protection programs, where the more modern approaches hide and conceal the identity of the witnesses and relocate them. Now, it's something that isn't so much a problem under Article 6, which enshrines the right to a fair trial. But the more modern programs focus on other ways, video depositions with voice modulation, using prior written depositions, etc. All of these are means to conceal the identity of the person, and all of this falls squarely within what is allowed by Article 6 of the Convention. The states also have positive obligations towards witness that are established under Article 6 of the Convention, the right to life. And what this means is that states are under the obligation to protect people against threats against their life, even if those threats have not yet been materialized by physical injury or death. Article 2 creates the obligation to protect witnesses when authorities know that there is a real risk or an immediate risk of that person losing their life. Article 8 also establishes other positive obligations to guarantee the continuity of family and private life of witnesses. So these are two obligations that are enshrined in the European Convention and that our court deals with every day. Now, these obviously include dissuasive criminal provisions, but also operational measures. And one of the things that offsets this is that since our court said in the case A and B against Romania, you need the cooperation of witness. If you do not have witness cooperation, you cannot necessarily speak about the possibility for witnesses to be protected by states. Now, that's witness protection. And when it comes to limitations to witness protection by the right of the defense in a criminal proceeding, let me say this. When witnesses can use identity concealment technologies so that they don't have to attend the trial in person, this could actually undermine the rights of the accused under Article 6. And so when it comes to cases like this, the court takes a holistic approach, and we try to envisage a measure that would make it possible for the defense to have depositions or interviews with the witness for the prosecution to ensure that there is an equitable basis for the procedures. Now, in Al-Khawaja versus the United Kingdom, which was in fact referred to by the ICC in the second ruling on the Central African Republic. Well, it's stated that there are three tests to determine whether or not a trial has been equitable and fair when there has been a case of modern technology concealing the identity of the witnesses. Now, we give, I think, this a lot more weight to witnesses, but one have to determine whether or not there were good reasons for the witnesses to give testimony anonymously or not, to see if it was anonymous or just extrajudiciary, and that was the only grounds for the charges brought against the accused, or if there were enough extenuating factors that would make it possible to have a sound and correct witness testimony that is reliable. Now, what experience has shown us is that the jurisprudence of our court, when it comes to witness protection, can be a source of inspiration for the ICC. And the ICC is also something that we discuss a lot in our own case law, and including discussions of the Rome Statute. Thank you very much. Thank you, Judge, for those comments, and thank you very much for this very relevant analysis of the issue of witness protection. We greatly appreciate the experience that you brought to bear in what you've said, and I think that your experience bears witness as to how important it is for all of us to pay due attention to witness protection. Our third panelist is Elizabeth Evanson from Human Rights Watch.
Ajusté compte tenu du temps.
And could you please be as brief as possible?
Thank you so much, Ambassador, and I apologize for being the only non-Francophone on this panel.
Don't worry.
But thank you, Ambassador, and also Ambassador Alabrun, for the invitation to participate in today's panel discussion. As I think President Fernandez also noted at the opening of this session, I realize that this is the 10th anniversary of the dedicated cooperation plenary during the Assembly session. So in this year of many anniversaries, it stands out to me as evidence of the absolutely central role of state cooperation in the Rome Statute system. And I think it's the only thematic discussion within the Assembly that has endured through the years. Ambassador, you have already stressed the court's responsibilities under Article 68 to ensure the protection of victims and witnesses appearing before the court. The capacity of the court to ensure adequate protection and support is likely to determine the extent to which witnesses will cooperate with the court and to which victims will take active part in proceedings. Witness cooperation and victims' participation, in turn, are key factors in this court's ultimate success. I think the discussion has largely focused on the cooperation element of witness protection, particularly in the context of witness relocation. Relocation should be a measure of last resort, and yet it is an unfortunate necessity. Where needed, and to mitigate the humanitarian consequences that Natasha spoke to so clearly, the court depends on the political will of states to accept victims and witnesses for relocation on the one hand, and on the other, to have the technical expertise to support relocation and protection. This latter aspect then also highlights what we could call a complementarity opportunity for witness protection. States can work together to share expertise and provide capacity building activities with the aim of developing witness protection programs nationally. After all, witness protection is not only a challenge at the international level. This could be an important component of positive complementarity strategies. That is, strategies aimed at assisting national authorities to investigate and prosecute serious international crimes. Where the ICC is itself investigating, such strategies are a key element of ensuring that as the ICC completes its work, it contributes to a lasting legacy for the rule of law. The Assembly should revisit its discussions on complementarity, with the aim of increasing these kinds of exchanges in line with the spirit of Independent Expert Review Recommendation 247. And then finally, let me conclude by noting that while the discussion today focused in the main on witness protection, a number of other actors may be put at risk because of the operation of justice. This includes intermediaries on which the court relies to act as go-betweens, for example, with survivor communities. It also includes NGOs and human rights defenders advocating for justice. That advocacy, of course, is what brings the world's attention to human rights crises that should be addressed by the Rome Statute system. And in pressing for cooperation and political support, that advocacy creates the very enabling environment necessary for justice to work. The court and the Assembly have a number of tools to ensure they play the role that they can in addressing these risks. And we would look to you, states parties, and the court to ensure that those tools remain fit for purpose and are implemented fully in practice. For the court, this could include revisiting guidelines on intermediaries and available security and protection measures. And for the Assembly, you have before you an important new tool following the Bureau's adoption of a strategy to implement the review recommendation 169 regarding the Assembly's response to threat or attack against the court, its officials, and those cooperating with it. Threats to human rights defenders for their advocacy on behalf of justice may be aimed at derailing the court's mandate. The Assembly and states parties should integrate responses to attacks on civil society into their broader strategies for confronting obstruction of the ICC's work. In so doing, you, as the Assembly, as states parties, can stand up for human rights defenders and serve as a model for supporting the vibrant civil society space that is the beating heart of the international justice movement. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Madame.
Thank you very much, Madam Evenson. Thank you for having agreed to our invitation to participate in this panel discussion. The ideas you've shared with us are of great interest and are definitely worth pointing out, and in particular insofar as the participation of CSOs in these tireless efforts to ensure the full implementation of the Rome Statute, including protection of witnesses. Thank you very much. At this stage, we had planned to give the floor to some delegations who'd asked for the floor. Let me read out the list of delegations. We have the Czech Republic, Belgium, and Serbia. We have a non-state party which also wished to take the floor, the United States of America. For civil society, we have two entities, Ahmed Al-Boufou on behalf of Al-Haq and the Moroccan Center for Peace and Love, from Mr. Sherkawi. But given the time constraints that we are facing, I would again like to take this opportunity to thank the interpreters, first of all, for extending their working hours to accommodate us, and I would kindly request that all speakers make sure that they can keep things as brief as possible. So those that I've mentioned will be given the floor. Please make sure that you hand in your written statements and we will take them into consideration, and we will actually, you can refrain from speaking. And this brings us to the end of the plenary of the ASP, focusing on cooperation. I think that the statements of various participants in the panel discussion, especially during the first segment, with the President of the Assembly, the OTP, the courts, the states parties, experts, civil society, these exchanges have made it quite clear to all of us that, first of all, cooperation has to be focused on more generally, but then we also have to focus on a couple of things: voluntary contributions, cooperation, and witness protection under the Rome Statute. What this exercise has shown us is that we have to make sure that we can do a sound job with all of these things to ensure that we have a full implementation of the Rome Statute in order to fight against impunity for the most horrible international crimes. It's my conviction that all of the states and all of the other participants in this segment are mindful of just how important these themes are in achieving the objectives of the court. We will bear in mind all of the addresses that we've heard today and take those ideas back home with us. Now, let me echo what my co-facilitator said vis-a-vis the registrar and the registry. I think some delegations have mentioned Mr. Lewis by name. We owe him a great deal, and I would like to thank him for an outstanding job he's done in the position of registrar, and I wish him every success going forward. And to conclude, again, in light of the functions that he's been involved in, I would like to express my own personal gratitude to my compatriot, Mr. Amadou Ba. He was here with us last year, for those of you who know him. He's an eminent Senegalese judge who just retired from the court just a while ago, who served for many years with dedication, rigor, and in fact, he was the head of the section for international cooperation within the prosecutor's office. I just wanted to pay tribute to him and wish him, again, the very deserved success that he will carry on or take on board following the instructions of the President of Senegal. So on that, I would, again, draw this meeting to a close and thank you all for your kind attention. The session is adjourned. Thank you all.